This week, we see the continuation of the two major campaigns, the unexpected and uncontested Union march through Florida, and Sherman's cleanup operation in Mississippi. But there is more. A return to a forgotten territory, the end of law in the Confederacy, and a new technology gets its first victory. But at what cost? Let's start this week off with the long-awaited return to Indian Territory. Union Colonel William A. Phillips has 1,500 men and a goal to bring the entire territory under his control. This expedition has four objectives: establish federal outposts all over the land, bring Chickasaw, Creek, and Seminole tribes back under the fold by giving amnesty, break all tribes from the Confederacy, and recruit new soldiers. This isn't just a skirmish. Phillips has real plans for this expedition. Circular Headquarters, 1st Brigade, Army of the Frontier, Fort Gibson, CN, January 30th, 1864. Soldiers! Take you with me to clean out the Indian Nation south of the river, drive away and destroy the rebels. Let me say a few words to you that you are not to forget. Do not begin firing in battle until you are ordered. When you fire, aim low, about the knee, or at the lower part of a man's body, if on horseback. Never fire in the air. Fire slowly and never until you see something to shout at that you may hit. Do not waste your ammunition. Do not straggle or go away from the command. It is cowards only that leave their comrades in the face of the enemy. Nearly all the men we get killed are stragglers. Keep with me close and obey orders, and we will soon have peace. Those who are still in arms are rebels, who ought to die. Do not kill a prisoner after he has surrendered, but I do not ask you to take prisoners. I ask you to make your footsteps severe and terrible. Muskegees, the time has now come when you are to remember the authors of all your suffering, those who started needless and wicked war, who drove you from your homes, who robbed you of your property. Stand by me faithfully. We will soon have peace. Watch over each other to keep each other right. Be ready to strike a terrible blow on those who murdered your wives and little ones by the Red Fork along the Prejudice or by Dave Farm cow pens. Do not be afraid. We have always beaten them. We will surely win. May God go with us. William A. Phillips, Colonel, commanding. By February 13th, the Union is ready to take on their first struggle, a rebel stronghold by Middle Boggy Depot. The battle is quick and decisive. 90 Greycoats are forced from their territory, losing 47 dead due to the killing of wounded, but still, the Union suffering no losses. After the victory, Phillips takes the destruction of Chickasaw houses, businesses, and schools. The news of the brutality of the Union force only strengthens Confederate resolve, brings the tribes closer to the CSA. What a shameful display from one of our officers. Now for the campaign of the month. Meriden. The 12th saw the march of both Sherman and William Soy Smith, both facing steady but light resistance. On the 14th, Sherman enters his objective and turns his troops on the city. They plunder the outside railroads and everything they can get their hands on. For 5 days, 10,000 men worked hard and with a will in the work of destruction with its depots, storehouses, arsenals, hospitals, offices, hotels, and cantonments. General Polk watches from outside the city with nothing he can do. When news of Meriden's fall reaches Davis, he becomes paranoid. Sherman could march to Mobile Bay and end this war early. On the 17th, Davis arranges for General Joseph Johnston to send reinforcements to Polk, hoping to contain Sherman. But those reinforcements are days away, and Sherman is only hours. The other campaign of note is the Florida one, under General Truman Seymour. So far, the District of Florida has taken Barber's Ford in Lake City. On the 14th, after a brief skirmish, the town of Gainesville is taken. The 15th saw the Union march of raiding at their own pleasure. By now, General P.G.T. Beauregard has received word of the Union assault. He has been caught off guard. The state has little military value, so few soldiers defend it. He rushes Brigadier General Colquitt's Georgians to Florida General Joseph Finnegan. And with all of this combined, the rebels only have 5,000 men to take on the Union's 5,500. All to decide the fate of the Sunshine State. It really is up to every individual soldier. Now to return to the rest of the war. On the 16th, in desperation, President Davis solicits suggestions from anyone about how to fix the current logistical problems in his breakaway nation. I understand the president doesn't know everything. This is a symbolic gesture to show the executive branch wants to hear from its citizens. But this doesn't install any confidence in the army. At Mobile Bay, Alabama, USS Octorana and the USS J.P. Jackson led the bombardment of Fort Powell. This is the first offensive action against Mobile, and if it's successful, then the rebels will have no major ports on the Gulf left. That would end the entire Confederate control of anything west of the Carolinas. Moving north to Charleston, Admiral Dahlgren orders 100 torpedoes from Benjamin Malford. Each of these charges will provide with a clockwork arrangement, which will determine the exact time of firing. They're to contain 110 to 125 pounds of gunpowder each. Dahlgren believes that these torpedoes will destroy the obstructions that hold his force back from entering the harbor. Next day, we continue at Charleston Harbor with the CSS H.L. Hunley. This is a submarine, and so far it has lost 13 rebels their lives, including the creator Horace Lawson Hunley. But now it should have all of its kinks worked out. And that night, it begins its first journey. The plan is to sink and destroy the USS Housatonic, a sloop of war, and return back to Charleston Harbor unspotted. Initially, the Confederate submersible was to be armed with a floating mine that would drag to the Union vessel. This was considered too dangerous as the mine might get caught on something or crash into the Hunley, so instead they use a spar torpedo, which is just a ram with an explosive at the end, which I'm sure is so much safer. On the deck of the Housatonic, a lone sailor watches the water and sees rippling. It must be an enemy vessel. He says Housatonic can't lower its cannons enough to fire at the Hunley, so the crew takes their pistols and rifles. But of course, none of these shots can do anything to the submarine. Bam! An explosion right at the hull. Men get to their lifeboats, and most make it out alive. Only 5 go down with the ship. But what about the Hunley? The underwater explosion rippled through the hull of the submarine, and the blast injury killed every single Confederate. This is the world's first ever successful submarine, and it killed 26 in total, but only 5 of our men, making the entire thing a net failure of 16 men for the South. Sure, they can have their achievement, but after the Hunley's poor showing, I'm not worried about submarines at all. The rest of the 17th revolves around the Confederate Congress. They, in a contentious vote, suspend the writ of habeas corpus until August 2nd. This gives both President Davis and Secretary of War James Seddon the power to arrest anyone for any reason. Then, in another controversial vote, the age of conscription is expanded from 17 to 50. One Confederate politician wrote, "Far better that our country should be overrun by the enemy, our cities sacked and burned, and our lands laid desolate, than that the people should suffer the citadel of their liberties to be entered and taken by professed friends." This breaks Vice President Alexander Stephens from President Davis. In the midst of the tension, the First Confederate Congress dismisses itself for the 4th and final time. The final day revolves around President Lincoln. First he writes to the governor of Massachusetts, John Andrews. "It be really true that Massachusetts wishes to afford a permanent home within her borders for all, or even a large number of colored persons who will come to her. I shall only be too glad to know it." Enslaved people fleeing their bondage to the safety of the North have not had the best reception, but the radical Bostonians wish to rectify that. For the final action of the week, President Lincoln permits the trade of non-military goods in Brownsville, Texas. I mentioned this because with the Battle of Milwaukee that started this week, I wonder if the Union could do a pincer move and claim Texas in a lightning strike. But alas, that's unlikely. Then there is Sickles. He is living the high life. The 13th, he's at a reception with the cabinet, Lincoln, and important members of Congress. As he wines and dines the upper crust of D.C., Arkansas is panicking. Governor Isaac Murphy has only had his position for a moment. Now Sickles is coming? Plus, the New York Times said he would have complete authority. Does that mean he is replacing Steele? With such a huge appearance, Murphy is worried that he would lose control of the state. I hope Murphy and Sickles can work it out. That's where the week ends, and once again I wish to comment on the surprising state of affairs. The Union has broken the side of the rebellion with Sherman in striking distance of Mobile, which is also in danger of the Union fleet off the coast. That could end the rebellion in the West. And with Florida, well, we can shove a boot up their ass and end this insurrection. Hello, it's the entire Civil War by We team here. I would just like to thank every single one of you for watching this video. Your support means the world to me, and I really do hope to see you next week.